Here's the uncomfortable truth that the entire world must come to terms with. The Iranian regime are now a greater threat to the international community, their regional adversaries, and even their own people than they've ever been before. Here's why. Trump's ill-considered attempt to topple the Islamic theocracy has failed. They are wounded, but their grip on power is tighter than it was only 3 months ago. Those that remain will be far more extreme in their ideology, their means, and their urgency. By making it repeatedly clear that the US will work with anyone inside Iran to topple the current leadership, they have cemented an inescapable paranoia into the fabric of the internal security apparatus, especially after so much evidence has emerged of at least some level of infiltration by Israeli intelligence agencies. Just imagine how paranoid this hierarchy will be now, how easy it will be for them to justify violence, when any critic could be a genuine collaborator. Just think of how objectively necessary it will be to clamp down on any potential enemy within. And they will be free to be as aggressive and as oppressive as they want to be on their own people, because they know that no amount of state-administered bloodshed will prompt a reaction from the US, because the civil, political, and human rights of the Iranian people has never once been mentioned by Trump as a condition of peace, let alone a non-negotiable priority. And they know that right now they are negotiating from a rare position of strength, because they have achieved two key objectives. The infrastructure of the regime has survived whatever US airstrikes could hit them with, and they still have sufficient offensive capability to maintain effective control over the Hormuz Strait and to enforce the doctrine of mutually assured destruction of energy infrastructure with their Gulf state neighbours. Now, by maintaining this capability, they know that the economic and human costs of a US escalation is politically intolerable for Trump. They know he desperately wants an off-ramp, but they're only going to give him one if they believe it's in their interests. They know that they currently possess a decisive weapon that has the ability to inflict a festering wound in the side of an already weakened and isolated adversary. But they know that the ability to deploy that weapon is not indefinite. So what this uneasy peace has done is initiate an arms race. Once the might of the US military-industrial complex turns its minds to a solution, there is a very strong chance that it will eventually gain sufficient technological superiority to make passage through the Hormuz Strait safe, and to ensure the security of the energy infrastructure of the entire Gulf, no matter how hostile and perilous the Iranian regime try to make it. But as it stands, Iran's ability to inflict damage with low-cost and easily deployable drones and short-range missiles means it has the upper hand. But the Iranian regime will know that the moment they lose this very specific aspect of their military supremacy, they will be vulnerable to another attack from either Israel or the US. So the regime has an obvious strategic priority: maintain effective control over the strait for as long as it takes to develop a nuclear deterrent. Now, when Obama made a deal with Iran in 2009, he built trust with them by having Russia and China involved in the negotiations, and this guaranteed the endorsement of the UN Security Council. This elevated it from a mere treaty between two nations into a global, legally recognized framework under international law. Iran had very little leverage in those negotiations beyond the threat their nuclear program posed. They therefore traded that program for crucial sanctions relief, but reserved the ability to rebuild that program within about 12 months if the deal just fell apart. But Obama had the leverage to ensure that strict and intrusive monitoring was in place to enforce the deal. The regime recognized that this was a rare and fleeting opportunity to secure a deal with the US president that appeared to be committed to good faith negotiations, but was also in no rush and had the ability just to walk away if Iran didn't compromise. They are now dealing with the president who unilaterally tore that deal up, despite Iran and every other nation abiding by its terms. And crucially, they are now dealing with the president that assassinated their entire leadership group in the middle of the last negotiations. Now this time they have the leverage, and this time it's the US president that needs a deal more urgently than they do, which means this time Iran are the ones with the power to set the terms of the deal. So, in summary, in 2009, we had a UN Security Council enforced agreement involving China, Russia, and Europe, with terms set in the USA's favour to ensure the world could indefinitely limit Iran's nuclear capabilities while attempting to reintroduce them into the global community and reintegrate their industries into the global economy, dramatically reducing the global price of oil and increasing the economic costs of any future hostility, thus compelling both sides to avoid conflict. Now, we have a regime that will likely be far more oppressive, more radicalized in its grievances, and more determined than ever to obtain a long-term nuclear deterrence, setting the terms of a deal with an adversary they have no reason to trust, fully aware that this is a president who cares far more about the headlines than he does about the small print. It will be a disaster for the stability of the region and frankly the whole world if a radicalized fundamentalist theocracy obsessed with the worship of martyrdom and apocalyptic prophecy attain a genuine nuclear arsenal. But such is the catastrophic failure of this military campaign for the US that this Iranian regime will be foolish if they do not use their strategic leverage over Trump to secure a deal which allows them to cheat. Because no matter what the terms of this deal, its enforcement will be defined by the fact that Iran now has the ability to cause economic chaos on the world at any point by merely announcing the closure of the strait. The truth is, there's only one person with the power to prevent Iran from pursuing a nuclear weapon right now, and that's President Xi from China. He has the economic leverage and the ability to establish something that feels close enough to a security guarantee that could be sufficient for the Iranian regime to believe that a nuclear deterrent is no longer such a necessity that they would risk economic collapse to attain it. Now, whether the Chinese government chooses to use its power to make the world more stable, to meaningfully limit the proliferation of a weapon that can literally cause our extinction, and to become the enforcer of a new rules-based order, or whether it maintains its strict policy of non-interference and unconditional ethical agnosticism, that's a question that's going to define global security over the next decade and potentially set in stone China's ascension to the seat of superpower supremacy. But remarkably, it might be an opportunity the whole world will now be encouraging it to take. And that's because of Trump.